Welcome back to Overtime Heroics. I'm Mason Shatwell, and joining me today is the promoter of the Almighty Fighting Championship, Mr. Ray Thompson. How you doing, Ray?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. How does it feel to have your show scheduled again after a long layoff from Almighty?
Oh, mate, I went to a golden ticket on Saturday, and it was amazing. That they always put on a good show anyway, but being in that atmosphere again, being around people that are involved with MMA, being with the crowd that was there, it was insane. I just can't wait to get back up and running. I've missed it so much.
And as I'm aware, there was some good fights on Saturday at Golden Ticket. Which was your standout fight?
There was a title fight between, I have to remember the name. I think it was Wes Tully. Wes Tully looked really good in his fight, and the fight I'm thinking of was Stafford Swainston and Kieran Timmons. That was an insane fight. I don't know how it went 5 rounds. Timmons showed so much heart. There was a couple of pro fighters that stood out as well. Melissa Mullins stood out, and James Dixon stood out. They're both from the same gym. They're getting married this year, but they both look really good as well. But overall, the whole card was solid. There wasn't one mismatch on the card. It was a really well matched card all the way throughout. There was no one that was there to just make up the numbers. They were all there to win.
Yeah, I was going to mention about mismatches with MMA, so I'll start there. I've seen some of the fights that you've got on Almighty as well, and some of the fights that are scheduled. As far as I'm aware, none of them are mismatches. The one I'm looking forward to the most is Richard Mearns and Johnny Brocklesby. I spoke to Richard on Friday. That interview's out now, everyone, if you want to check it out on the channel. And due to be speaking to Johnny as well. How do you see, not a prediction, but what do you think we can expect from that fight?
Well, Johnny's a very aggressive fighter. Richard's a bit more measured, likes to take his time. I can see Johnny pushing the pace on Richard and looking to put Richard on his back. So it's whether Richard can keep the fight standing, a bit like what Kieran did when he fought Kieran Lister, or whether he can get him down. But then Richard is well rounded and he'll be dangerous off his back as well. It's a fight I'm excited for. I mean, when I made the fight, I was happy with the fight. They're both former AFC champions. Obviously, Richard had one of our biggest moments ever in the history of Almighty when he had the big head kick knockout over Adam Butterworth, and the clip went viral because after he knocked him out, he ran over to check if he was all right. Just because Richard's you've spoke to him, he's such a nice guy. He's not your stereotypical fighter. He's very educated. He's a really nice guy. But yeah, it's going to be a real good fight for me. It's going to be the power of Brocklesby versus the technique of Mearns.
I can't wait for that fight. And there's a point I wanted to bring up. I don't know how much you're going to be able to give away on it, but I seen you posted on your Facebook about UFC Fight Pass potentially showing one of the Almighty shows. Is there any updates or anything on that?
So as it stands at the moment, I'm in talks with them about becoming our brand coming onto UFC Fight Pass. So it would show all the shows, hopefully starting from next year. So we're just running through figures at the moment. So I've had to put a quote together for them on what it would cost for us to do. So I've sent that over to them. They're looking at that now. So it's all in progress. It's all moving forward. It takes time, but I'm very positive that it's going to happen. And if it does, we'll be one of 2 UK MMA shows on Fight Pass, which obviously the one being Cage Warriors. So to be put on that in that bracket for me with Almighty would be fantastic because Cage Warriors is by far the market leader in the UK and the #1 show in the UK. So to even be in their kind of area, I'd be really happy with.
How much of a boost would it be for Almighty getting onto the Fight Pass?
I think it'd be amazing. I think it would show our intention. It would show that that we are a legit show. I mean, everyone that's been involved with Almighty in the past always comes away and says good things about the show. I get fighters that want to come back and be on the show. I've got some fighters that only want to fight on my show, and that's all down to what we do. So to be on Fight Pass, it's just recognition for all the work we've put in over the last few years.
You mentioned Cage Warriors a moment ago. Did you catch the trilogy at all past weekend?
I got to watch the very first card. I didn't get to see the other 2, but I followed all the results.
What did you make of Matt Bonner's victory against Mathias Fredericks?
I was so pleased for him. He's such a nice guy as well. I've spoke to him a few times. He was booked to fight on my show a while ago, and the fight fell through. This is before obviously his current run. But I just think what amazes me is his change. I mean, he went from being a 50-50 record. He joined Next Generation, and then went on this crazy run where he's beat George Smith, which I think he was the underdog going in. He beat Matt Inman. He then beat James Webb, and then to do what he did against Frederick was just absolutely amazing. I mean, they both looked exhausted going into those later rounds, but he just seemed to dig it out and find it from I don't know where. But yeah, I was pleased for him. He's such a likable person. I was pleased that he got it. I was rooting for him.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't, obviously, you say you followed the results, and what surprised me over the past weekend and past 3 events for Cage Warriors is the amount of submissions that we've seen. It seems that Cage Warriors has acquired a lot of talented grapplers over the past coming months and years that they've been acquiring these athletes.
I just think in general the standard is high on Cage Warriors. Whatever their area is. I mean, I know Justin Burlington, for example. He's a fighter that I know really well, and he won by a TKO, but he's a submission expert as well. So there's skills everywhere now, and as this sport evolves, I mean, I've been following the sport for over 20 years. I've been following it before it was even called mixed martial arts. So from seeing what it was to what it is now, like your guys who are mid-range now would have beat your top tier guys back in the early UFCs. Not so much when we got to the Ladals and stuff, but before then, because the level now is so high.
100%. I think I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. With Almighty, you've had, 16, 17 shows over the years?
17.
What's your standout moment?
Well, I did a top countdown, didn't I, of the top 30 on my Facebook, and my number one moment was the middleweight title fight from AFC 3, which was Dan Tempest versus Martin Bedners. It was the first middleweight title fight we did. Martin Bedners was fighting out of Lockdown MMA, which is a real good solid gym up in Lincolnshire. Dan Tempest was fighting out of AVT, which is of course one of the biggest gyms in Yorkshire. Danny Mitchell, Jason Furness. They come out. It was just a war. Martin's Polish, as tough and gritty as you imagine with the Polish fighters. Dan only knows one way, which is to go forward. So literally they've stood and traded. In round 2, Bedners has caught him with a punch, which has put him down and broke his nose. It looked like he was on his way out, but there's no quitting Dan Tempest. He carries on going. And then in round 4, there's a scramble on the ground, and Tempest, they're both obviously tired at this stage. Tempest takes Bedners back. He's probably losing on points at this stage. He takes his back and sinks in the rear naked choke. And I think what made it so dramatic was the fact that Martin, there was no quitting him, and rather than submit, he went to sleep, and then Tempest was new champ. But it was just a real good fight. But that was, when I did my countdown, that was my number one moment. And we've had loads of amazing moments.
100%. I think what excites me about the AFC coming back as well is the same with a lot of the local shows is you'll see a lot of these guys that they want to make it to the UFC, but it also seems that they put more effort than some of the UFC guys in, because for them it's win or lose. It could be make or break for their career. And you see some of the UFC guys, some of them don't put their all into it, and because they're already at the big show. But I see a lot of the local athletes put 10 times more effort than some UFC guys. I think that's what's good about the local shows returning again.
I think one of the things what I found interesting was I saw on the Contender Series last year, Dana White was saying that he was worried about the lack of these shows because, he said it won't impact UFC now, but in a few years' time it will. Because the thing is no matter how big the UFC is, and the UFC is huge, without these smaller shows, the UFC is not going to exist, because no one's going to come in and go, as you know, no one's going to come in and go straight to the UFC. You've got to come in and you've got to work your way up. You've got to start on a show like Almighty, and there's a few out there, Golden Ticket, UKFC, to mention a few. They're some of the standout shows to me. You've got to start on these shows. You've got to do well, and if you do well, hopefully you then get picked up and you get onto Cage Warriors. If you then do well on Cage Warriors, that's when you've got a real shot of getting into the UFC. But without shows like us at the bottom, giving those first opportunities to lads that are just starting out and ladies that are just starting out, they're not going to make it to Cage Warriors and UFC. And that's what made me want to reach out to Fight Pass, because Dana White said we need to get more shows on Fight Pass so they can get these shows back up and running. And that's what made me reach out and contact them. And I was able to get an email address. And the rest is history, or it's history in the making if we can get it done.
As you said, you sent the quote over to them, and if they accept, would you say next year is when we could be expecting to see Almighty on UFC Fight Pass?
Well, the way they explained it to me is that, like in most sports, you have a season and an off season. I mean, we talk about football. Most footballs will run from roughly August until May. But as we know with MMA, it's an all year round sport. There's no season, so they tend to run it from January to December. So he said they tend to take new programming on in January. It's very unusual for them to take it on mid-year. So it's not. It doesn't mean it will never happen, but it's very unlikely. So that's the idea they put in my head, that they would be looking for January. So that's what I've got in my head. If we can get on soon, that'd be amazing. But if we got on for January, I mean, my first show next year is Feb. But if we got on for the start of next year, and I've got 11 shows booked next year, if we got on for all that time, that'd be brilliant.
100%. I'm sure throughout the years after doing what you've been doing with Almighty and everything else MMA, you've met some great people within the sport. But is there any standout people that you've met through doing what you do?
I've been so lucky, because before I do what I do now, I used to do what you do. I used to run my own podcast called MMA Mentor, which is where my handle comes from. And I started out. I mean, I reckon I'm going back about 9 or 10 years now. And I started out with a friend, and we just started out, us two, talking about the latest UFCs that were coming up. And then we decided to reach out and book interviews, and we started off going for UK guys. Our very first interview was Rob Sinclair, and then we got James Doolan and Joanne Calderwood. This is before obviously the UFC. And then we thought we'd try and get UFC guys, and before we knew it, we were interviewing everyone and anyone from the UFC. So I was lucky enough to interview so many people from the UFC, fighters that went on to be champions, people that work for the UFC, like the referees. I interviewed Bruce Buffer, things like that. And then I got lucky enough to get press passes. So I was going to the UFC, and I was cage side. I did that for quite a few. I've stayed in the hotels with the UFC fighters, so I've met quite a few of them in person as well. I think one of the most surreal moments was I was at the very first event that I went to in Sweden, which was when Alexander Gustafsson was headlined against Thiago Silva. So we were going back a few years, and I come down in the lift, and the lift door opened, and George St. Pierre was standing there, and he was there cornering Francis Carmont. I was just completely. I mean, this is when he was I mean, he's still one of the best ever, but this is when he was the champ, when he was at the top, and I was just completely gobsmacked. I was like, I didn't know what to say. I just froze. It was like a deer in the headlights. But yeah, I've been very lucky. I've met, and then just then getting involved with the UK scene, I've met so many good people on the UK scene. You know, we work with pretty much the same team all the time, but I've had chances to work with some great coaches that are in the UFC, like David Grant stands out, of course, because he's in the UFC and he regularly puts guys through my show, which is an honour for me. We work with Next Generation, and they've got a number of fighters in the UFC. We work with Team Calbon. You know, they've got a number of fighters in the UFC. Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant. It's great to be recognised by people that are at the top end of the sport.
I'm not going to ask you to name drop any, but has there been any fighters or gyms that you found difficult to work with in the past? And if so, how do you handle
that? There's some people that are some people can be quite rude. You have to try and be a bit thick-skinned to it, and then if you think that they're too difficult to work with, then just don't work with them again. There's enough people out there where you can pick and choose who you want to work with, and I feel like we're in a good enough place now where we're pretty well established. We've got a good reputation. We're known to be good to work with, because if that wasn't the case, people wouldn't keep coming back. Mm-hmm. So if there's people out there that are difficult to work with, then we just don't work with them. It's as simple as that. And there's always going to be character clashes. That's just part of life, isn't it? I try not to get drawn into anything, or try not to get silly or petty. I try never to say anything public, because you never know what can happen in the future. It might be that we don't work with each other now, but we might work with each other in the future. And then you never want to rule things out indefinitely, because then you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So, but yeah, for the most part though, most people are very good to work with. I would say 99% good, and there's been 1% that's been difficult. That's not bad, I don't think.
Yeah, 100%. How did you mentioned obviously your podcast? Was that how you first got into the MMA world as a whole?
Well, I mean, I was a fan from. I mean, I'm 42 now. I've been a fan since I was 20. So when I started watching MMA, it wasn't even known as MMA. That wasn't even a term. It was just UFC. That's what it was. It was UFC. I started watching. One of my neighbours gave me a DVD, and it was UFC 38, which was the very first time that the UFC come to London. And you had Matt Hughes headlining against Carlos Newton, and you had Frank Mir got beat by Ian Freeman, and he had Mark Weir's super fast knockout. And I watched that and I really liked it. And then obviously at that time there hadn't been many UFCs, and people were selling pirate copies of these UFC events. So I was able to buy the whole back catalogue of UFC events from UFC 1 up to 38. So I watched every single event in order. So I've seen every single UFC from UFC 1, and then from then I just worked forward, and I've never missed an event. I've seen them all. And that's what got me into it. And then I used to be involved in a fantasy mixed martial arts website called MMA Playground. And obviously it was like you had your pick'em game, so you pick each fight, you pick the winner, the rounds, and how they're going to win. You know, for TKO or submission. And they had a big community, and it was there's quite a lot of talk on there. And a couple of guys on there, they ran a podcast, and we went on as guests. We went on on theirs basically to chat with them. Like what they did was, they had somebody who was off, so they gave us a chance to come in and be a guest host, and we got to interview some people on that. And then someone approached me about setting up our own one, and we did, and it just went from strength to strength.
How did you come about making your own promotion in AFC?
So when I was doing MMA Mental, there was a guy out there called Stephen Mayer, who is the one I did the show with. He was running a clothing brand called Almighty Fightwear. And part of what he did was he sponsored up-and-coming fighters, and he sponsored quite a few fighters from Jack Mason's gym. And two of those fighters included Sean Carter, who was doing quite well on the Cage Warriors scene, and Arnold Allen, who was very young and up-and-coming at the time. And obviously Arnold's nickname is Arnold Almighty Allen. It was Steve who gave him that nickname because that was the clothing brand that Steve ran, and he sponsored Arnold before he was in the UFC. So Steve had been down to their camp and had been down to the gym and done like a shark tank with him. Mm-hmm. So they put him in, and they just kind of were playfully beating him up, letting him know who was boss, pushing him through his paces. And he put on Facebook saying he'd love to get in and compete against somebody who doesn't train but would train specifically for this fight. So I saw that. I've always been overweight, I still am now, and I just thought it'd be something I'd like to do, to go and test myself, see how I'd get on in a cage. So I said to him I'd be up for that. So we started talking. We booked a fight with each other. We fought at Ellen Road. I had 20 weeks to prepare. So I lost 5 stone in 20 weeks, put myself through like a really hard training camp. The fight's on YouTube for people to watch. It's don't get me wrong, it's not the most technical fight, but you can see us going there and having a go. So we fought 3 rounds. He won round 1. I won round 2. He won round 3. So he won by decision. And then shortly after that, I moved up north to East Yorkshire. Mm-hmm. And he lived like 20 minutes away. So I messaged him saying, do you want to set up a show? And we met in a pub. We sat and talked about it. And there we went from there. It took us about 10 months to plan the first show. And then we just went from strength to strength after that.
What goes into planning a show?
So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to find yourself a venue. And you look at the venue, you look at what the capacity is, what the cost is. You've got to weigh all that up, whether you're going to be able to do enough tickets to cover the cost of the venue. Then you've got to book all your officials, so your referees, your judges, your timekeeper. Then you've got to look at your medical people. So we'll have cut men, so people who are going to obviously be there in the corner to make sure if people have got a cut, they can be treated and continue to fight. We need a doctor there. We need paramedics there. We need an ambulance on standby. So if anyone does get hurt, we haven't had to need it. We haven't had to use it yet, but it's there if we need it. Then all the other stuff that goes around with it. So we make sure we've got the production set up. We've got the team there to make sure it runs on the night. So we have runners to make sure the fighters know where they need to be. We have people there to act there that are just hovering around, so that if the fighters need something, they can go and ask them. And then obviously the biggest thing then is putting all the fights together. And obviously when you first start out, you don't have the network with all the gyms, but then the longer you go, the more reputation you build, the more of a network you get, and eventually gyms, I'll still approach gyms, but a lot of times gyms will come to me now and say, oh, can we get on your show, which is always nice.
How do you obviously after a show, and I'm going to go back to your first show. How did you think, oh, Almighty could be a thing here?
Well, you never really, the way I look at it is you never really know if something can be a success until you give it a go. I mean, we did the first show. I look back on that first show, and I think to everyone on the outside, it looked like it ran really well. But behind the scenes, it didn't run well at all. I mean, we were all over the place. We weren't organised at all, but we didn't know what we were doing, and we were learning on the job. The weigh-ins the day before were an absolute disaster. We were hanging around in a pub, in a bar for these weigh-ins. We were there like something like 8 or 9 hours waiting for fighters to come to weigh in. It was really, I mean, we just didn't know. We were learning on the job basically. We were learning as we were going, and the first show wasn't great. We didn't make any money on the first show. We covered everything. We didn't make any money, but everyone was saying how good the first show was. Like everyone that was there was saying it was a great show, and it's such a buzz when you do something like that. I mean, for me, and I know you're a huge fan of mixed martial arts as well. For me, just being a fan of MMA, I just love to be involved with the sport in any way that I can. I've never been had the dedication to be able to do the training and compete. It's just not been me. But this is something that I can do and I can do well. So yeah, it felt right, and we just carried on, and it just went from strength to strength. And then we've met more gyms as we've gone along. We started off in Yorkshire. We've obviously then moved over to Liverpool, and we're expanding a bit more. I've got a show in Newcastle and a show in Coventry. Coventry is where I'm currently living. Yeah, it's just gone from strength to strength really. But you just get a feeling that you know yourself. I know myself if a show's good or not. I mean, I can watch my own show back and know if that was a good show or not, because I know enough about the sport to know what's good and what's not. So I've always been happy with what we've done. But then when I hear other people who work on lots of other shows, and they'll say, that yours is one of the better shows, that makes you feel good.
Yeah, 100%. And as you mentioned, obviously, the training's all different for people, whether they can do it or not. I started training about a year and a half ago now, and I was supposed to be, this Friday coming up was supposed to be my amateur debut. That's been postponed maybe August now, and it takes a lot out of people. So if people aren't able to commit fully to it, I totally agree with you. Like for myself, it's been difficult to train as often. It takes a lot out of people, but obviously it's for me, it's for the experience really. I'm not looking at it as, oh, I'm going to be next UFC star. I'm looking at it as it's a bit of fun, bit of experience for the time being. But with everything almighty, obviously, I think I've seen you've got 4 shows. Is it planned so far now?
So there's 5. I've got 5 shows planned for this year, and I'm currently matching and promoting 3 shows.
Where and when can people see them?
So we've got AFC 18, which is the 7th of August. That's at the Metrodome in Barnsley. That's sold out now, which we've never ever done this early on ever. So that's amazing. But that will be available on pay-per-view as well. And then on the 18th, we've got one on the 18th of September. It was due to be the 4th of September, but I had to change the date because of the UFC coming to London. And because our show's in Liverpool, 2 of the gyms we're working with is Next Generation and Team Calbon. They've both got fighters going to be on that show in Liverpool. You've got Darren Till, who's going to be headlining it. Paddy Pimblett's going to be making his UFC debut. So obviously it's going to make it difficult for them to cover both shows. UFC is obviously going to get priority, which I completely understand. So it just made sense for us to move. So we've moved that to the 18th of September now. So that's at the Olympia in Liverpool, which is a venue we've done a few times before. And it's a venue that's known in Liverpool for MMA because that's where Cage Warriors Academy used to do their shows as well. It's a really good venue. And then it was supposed to have been a 3-week gap, because I've had to move that one forward. It ends up being a week gap. So a week later after that, on the 25th of September, we've got our first show at Gateshead, Newcastle. So that's AFC 20. We've got a tough veteran on that one as well. So that's quite cool for me, because that'll be the first time we've got somebody on who's been anywhere near the UFC.
How can people buy tickets for the events that are not sold out yet?
So AFC 19, AFC 20. I always say the best way to get the tickets is if you know a fighter, get them via the fighter, because that's how the fighters can earn a bit of commission, and I always encourage that. If not, they can message me directly on Facebook, and they can get tickets through me if they don't know a fighter. But if you do know a fighter, support the fighter, because that's how they make a little bit of extra money.
How much do these tickets usually range? Is it depending on venue?
Yeah, but they vary. So like Liverpool show, the cheapest ticket is 30 quid, up to £45, unless you got 10 people going for a table. Then it's £50 a head on the table, but you buy the whole table, so it's £500.
Yeah.
And in Newcastle, there's standing is £25. You've got seating at £40, and we've got 5 tables, but they've all sold. They've gone already. One fighter took 4 tables yesterday. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Paying that price, it's nothing just to see the local scene back again. And Did you say the Liverpool one was sold out or
The Barnsley one sold out.
Barnsley one? Well, Liverpool's close to me. I'm Manchester, so I'm more than likely going to try and get tickets for that. What date was the Liverpool one on?
The 18th of September.
18th, yeah. Either the Liverpool or Newcastle, I'm going to try and get a ticket. Just like I say, watching the local scene, it's because you never know. Just you get good fights as well, and for all you know, you could be watching the next Conor McGregor.
Well, Conor McGregor had to start somewhere. He didn't go straight to the UFC. He's come through the scene in Ireland over to Cage Warriors, and well, the rest is history. I mean, what he's done is high an achievement. But yeah, everyone starts somewhere. No one goes straight to the UFC.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm just going to ask you a few more before I let you go, and it's just general questions about MMA UFC. I've seen obviously Francis Ngannou wasn't able to defend his title in August, and it looks like they've made a interim title between Cyril Gane and Derek Lewis. How'd you see that one going, mate?
Oh God, I really like Derek Lewis. I think he's one of the most exciting heavyweights around at the minute. And I'll be honest, I think Cyril Gane's last two fights, I've not really enjoyed them. I think they've been quite boring to watch. I mean, obviously he's won, but I haven't been blown away by him. But I see him doing the same again. Unless Lewis is one of these guys that's never out of a fight because he can always land. I mean, I didn't think Lewis would beat Curtis Blades, and he put him away. And then when Lewis was fighting Volkov a while back, he was getting battered. And then towards the end, he landed that big punch that put Volkov away. But I could see Gane beating Lewis. But I'd love to be wrong because I'd like to see Lewis Ngannou because obviously Lewis has already got a win over Ngannou.
Yeah.
What makes that even more interesting because Ngannou looked unstoppable until he fought Lewis, and I don't know how Lewis did it, but Lewis was able to beat him.
Oh yeah, 100%. And obviously, I'm going to ask you this: would you have rather seen John Jones and Ngannou or Lewis and Ngannou?
Lewis and Ngannou.
Yeah, I say the same because I've had a few people disagree with my opinion, but I don't know if you're the same, but I think Francis knocks out John.
I don't even know if it's that. I think he will knock out John, but I just think Lewis has earned it through what he's done in the heavyweight division. You know, he's not just winning fights; he's winning them in spectacular fashion. You know, he's going in there and he's knocking people out. And you know, as a fan, you want to see finishes like that. I mean, what he did to Curtis Blades was unbelievable. But he's done it to so many people, and he's such an unlikely champion because of the way he carries himself, his character, his personality. He doesn't come across. I don't know. There's just something special about him. But I'd love to see Lewis win it because I just think he's such a big underdog. Because of course he's fought for the title before. He fought DC, but it's fair to say DC was on a whole other level because of his wrestling. I mean, DC's wrestling's ridiculous. But yeah, I'd love to. I wanted to see Lewis versus Ngannou.
How do you see the Conor and Dustin trilogy happening a week Saturday?
Dustin again.
Really?
I called it the second time. I thought Dustin would knock him out. Dustin's a different fight from when they first fought. When they fought when they were at featherweight, Dustin's gone on and has improved so much at lightweight and is now easily. I mean, I personally thought look, he should have been fighting for the title, but obviously he wants to fight McGregor because there's more money, and I get that. I understand that completely. But I think he wins again, pretty much similar fashion, and then he goes on to fight Oliveira for the title.
Do you think he wins the title?
I think he can, yeah, I really do. But Oliveira is a strange one because he's absolutely brilliant, but I didn't have him beating Chandler. I really thought Chandler was going to win that. And Oliveira got caught really early on, and I thought this was it. But he just seems so. He seems like a different fighter as well. Since he's gone back to lightweight, he's much improved from when he was at featherweight.
Oh, 100%. And when that fight was happening, Chandler and Oliveira, when Chandler was landing the big shots, I thought it was going to be over. But on the same card as Poirier Conor, it seems Sean O'Malley's opponent, Smolka, has pulled out. And who would you like to see O'Malley fight on that card if he can get a short notice replacement?
Someone who's going to stand with him because that's obviously what his style is. This is in 2 weeks, isn't it? You know what? It's a shame because either Vera or Grant would have been good for that, but they're coming off an absolute war, so that would be no good. Just trying to think who would be good at the. I mean, he's talked about fighting Yan. I mean, what does Yan do? They're not going to give. I don't think Sterling's in a rush to fight Yan.
No.
For obvious reasons, but I don't know if Yan would want to fight on that short notice. I don't know. I don't think they'll give him someone too big of a name. I think they'll give him someone who will stand with him and who will beat.
Yeah, I think I've seen there was a post on UFC page Instagram about who's been calling him out, and I'm sure Tim Elliott was one that was calling him out as well. I think maybe giving Tim Elliott. I don't know. I think they're going to give him
Tim
someone.
Elliott's a hard fight because Tim Elliott's a really good grappler, but he's normally fights at flyweight as well. I don't know if Tim Elliott would be a good matchup for him because he's so experienced, and I just could see him getting in and shutting O'Malley down. And O'Malley's quite a lot younger than Elliott as well. I'd be surprised if he got Tim Elliott because I just think Tim Elliott would be really, really dangerous, and yet Tim Elliott's not someone they can really push because he's almost been as high as he can possibly go and is kind of plateauing a bit now. He went five. This is a guy who went 5 rounds with Demetrius. That takes some doing. I don't think that's a good matchup for O'Malley personally.
Yeah, well, I think they're just going to give you someone that he could possibly easily beat, and then after that, I see his next fight should be a Chito Vera rematch after Chito's had time to heal from the war with Davey, just because O'Malley's first loss, and if he wins, he'll be back in the top 15.
Yeah, I think he underestimated Vera. I think a lot of people do. To be fair, I don't think David Grant did because David Grant knew what he was getting into, but. I think Vera's brilliant. He's a really good fighter. That fight with Grant was fantastic.
100%. And obviously, the UFC has been putting on some major fights this year alone. Have you got a standout fight that you've enjoyed watching this year?
God, there was a pay-per-view, weren't there? The pay-per-view where we had Rose with the head kick knockout. There was that pay-per-view where literally every fight was ridiculously amazing. So she had the knockout. There was a big finish in the title fights as well. The other title fight, there was 3 titles, weren't there?
Valentina and Andrade, and then Usman and Masvidal.
Yeah, I think that for me has been the standout card this year.
Yeah,
you obviously had Usman knock out Masvidal. You had Valentino knock out Andrade, and then obviously Rose. I mean, you can't help but love Rose.
Yeah.
Oliveira Chandler was that. I remember that fight card being quite good as well, actually. Do you know, I watched so many, and they all just kind of blur. But I look forward to all of them, regardless of whether it's Gane versus Volkov headlining or Poirier versus McGregor. I look forward to all the cards the same because I just love watching the UFC, and I'm one of these that I don't tend to stay up and watch it because I fall asleep and I want to enjoy it. I tend to watch it the next day, but I'll watch it from the first fight. I'll get up in the morning. I'll go on UFC Fight Pass. I'll watch all the prelims first. Then I'll go and watch the main card on my BT Sport app. But I literally will watch every single fight.
100%. Before we end today, is there anything you want to sign off with? Any news about Almighty at all?
I just want to thank you for having me on. You know, I appreciate having the opportunity to come and to talk about MMA and talk about Almighty. I want to try and make Almighty. The way I look at it, Cage Warriors is the #1 show in the UK, and after that, there's a number of shows that are all just as good as each other. If I can get somewhere near the top of those shows, that's what I want to do. I know we've got a good reputation. I want to build on that. I'm putting together 3 fight cards at the moment. I've recently released the pro card for Newcastle, and people have gone absolutely bonkers for it. It's had such good reviews. I just want to see UK MMA back, and I want to see Almighty back. I mean, I went to Golden Ticket on Saturday, and it was such a thrill to be back in a live crowd. The fights were fantastic. You know, big credit to them for what they did. They're such good guys as well. But yeah, I just want to be back. I just want to see us all back to where we were. I've got tickets to go and see some other shows as well. I just want to go and see good quality MMA shows. I don't want to go and see the mismatches. I don't like that. But I want to go and see the proper shows and the proper fights.
100%. I just want to say thanks for coming on, and I've got no doubt I'm going to be at my first Almighty show very soon.
I look forward to it. Come and say hello.
100%. Ray, thanks for coming on, mate.